All right. Peace, family, and welcome to the STEM Files, the voice of STEM talent in Black culture. I am one of your co-hosts, your brilliant engineer, and on tonight's show, we tackle using science to obtain justice with Professor Kelly Knight, forensic scientist. Stay tuned for more after this. All right, family. Again, welcome to tonight's episode of the STEM Files, where we highlight the best and brightest in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, letting you all know what's going on, not only in the STEM community, but in the Black community as it pertains to STEM, extending our reach and letting and growing this network in this pipeline. I am one of your hosts, co-host Jabril Muhammad, aka your brilliant engineer. I am a civilian mechanical engineer and in-service engineering agent for the United States Navy, working primarily in auxiliary ship fluid systems. I have a background in material science and engineering, obtaining a Bachelor of Science degree at the University of Pennsylvania in material science and engineering, where I focus on learning about your different materials that we have present. There are different and there are different applications, whether it be something stronger, lighter, faster, such and such and so on. So I'm typically joined, as you all know, by my strong, illustrious co-host, Tariq Muhammad, aka Tariq Cardiac, who could not be with us this evening as we all sometimes have to handle business. But Tariq is a biomedical research scientist with an extensive background, going into everything from virology to something that's really near and dear to his heart, the Navy being in research with creating different remedies and products from that. So, as we continue, as we see, this is not about me. This is about our great and wonderful guest, Professor and forensic scientist Kelly Knight. How you doing tonight, Kelly?
Good. How are you? How are you?
Doing well. Can't complain. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and being with us or being with me this evening. We want to get right into your bio because I was thoroughly impressed, and I know if I was thoroughly impressed, but I'm always impressed by the people we have on the show. But I just want to make sure we get this content uh, right to our audience. So, getting right into it, we have Professor Kelly Knight is an associate professor with the George Mason University Forensic Science Program and a STEM accelerator. That's a big point going forward. She teaches undergraduate and graduate courses in forensic DNA and forensic chemistry and is also the principal investigator of the Forensic DNA Laboratory. As a STEM accelerator, she guides and mentors students in the forensic science program and coordinates K through 12 STEM outreach. She is the co-founder and director of the Females of Color and Those Underrepresented in STEM Focus summer programs for middle and high school girls. In addition to her experience in forensic DNA casework and expert testimony, she has over 10 years of experience in research, which has included areas such as laser, microdissection, and low copy number DNA methods. Professor Knight is currently serving as the biology section chair for the Mid-Atlantic Association of Forensic Scientists and is an American Academy of Forensic Sciences Fellow. Well, that was a mouthful, but there's a lot of good points to talk about that. So I just want to go into it right off the bat. So, Professor Knight, tell us a bit about, when we talk about topics here and we go into different courses of study, we have to realize that our audience sometimes are like, bona fide scientists or people, technologists, and sometimes just the person that's interested. So for all of us listening, what actually is forensic science, and how does it compare to what we may see on certain TV shows such as Bone, CSI, things like that?
Good question. So, the most simple definition or explanation of forensic science is the application of science to the law. What a lot of people don't realize, though, is that it's more than just the application of science to the law. Now it's really broadened out to be the application of really any type of STEM field to the law. So when you think of things like cybersecurity, forensic engineering, when bridges collapse, any area of STEM, science, technology, engineering, or math, that's used to solve any type of legal matter can be considered a forensic scientist or a forensic science. And in terms of how accurate it is in comparison to the shows, it's a very interesting question because they do often consult with forensic scientists on these shows like CSI and Bones and NCIS. And so there is some aspect of factual reality in those shows. But at the end of the day, they're shows and they're there for entertainment. And so a lot of things are exaggerated, a lot of things are sped up. A lot of things are kind of muddied to make it look a little bit more Hollywood. So it really is important for me, especially from a science communication side, to kind of dispel some of these facts and myths that we see in the media.
Awesome, awesome. You mentioned a few things that are key. So we know that STEM is a super fast growing area right now in a number of areas, and a number of things can play to that. I know for myself, I find myself as an engineer talking to certain young people who grew up with the Avengers, Tony Stark, Iron Man, things like that. And the one thing that he always is doing in the movies is engineering alone. So he's in there with Jarvis and his AI making new elements and new suits and talking all this jargon. It's just him kicking it. And what people don't understand is, no, not from whether it's school or the workplace. As an engineer, you're working in teams, and I'm sure in your field of forensic science have worked with teams as well. So speak to how the ability to work in teams as well as communicating in teams lends itself to being a great soft skill to have in your field.
Absolutely. So, a lot of people tend to think of scientists, especially forensic scientists, as these kind of morbid, socially awkward, isolated type people who, they go in their lab and they put their goggles on and they're playing with their test tubes and they don't talk to anybody, they don't interact with anybody. And it's the exact opposite. And I love explaining this to my students because, when we're in class and we're talking about, all of these really complex topics, one that comes to mind in particular is I'm thinking about like DNA mixtures. So when we run a DNA sample or a sample of evidence for DNA typing, you don't always get one single person in that final profile. If multiple people have handled it, you could get many different people in the same profile. So that's called a mixture. Well, sometimes these mixtures are really, really, really difficult to interpret. And so we all have this expertise, but the reality is sometimes you have to rely on the expertise of your team to help get you through those things. You have to kind of talk it out and have these group meetings like, hey, I have this really tough case and, I'm trying to make sense of it. Can you help me? And, it really provides a broader perspective to these things, which is good, not just for forensic science, but any type of field or discipline that you're in. The more perspectives and the more ideas that go into something, the better it is. And so it really is important that, you learn how to communicate with people, that you're not afraid to admit that you don't know something, that you are willing to go to others for help, because everybody's gonna benefit in the end.
Mm. You mentioned something again, everyone's benefit, right? And that kind of feeds right into the topic of our show. And I really want to get your insights on how we frame tonight's show. We're talking about using STEM to obtain justice. And before the show, we were kind of chopping up a bit about how this climate today has really lends itself to a field such as yours, where we can look at people being falsely charged or properly charged for things that they have done from a forensic perspective. I know for me, in my past, I have worked in like a forensic aspect of metallurgy, doing failure analysis. So we would get things in sometimes from the fleet, and then you would have different components you would slice up, dice up, and everything, and find and do root cause analysis under the microscope and everything to really figure out what happened, whether it was pitting, corrosion, failure due to cyclic loading, the wrong standard for materials were used, all these types of things. So what does that title, Using Science to Obtain Justice, mean for you, and how has that applied to your professional career, whether it was early in your career or even today?
Right. So, I mean, everything that we're working on in the crime lab is related to some element of justice, either, the victim obtaining justice for their wrong that has been done to them, the suspect potentially being exonerated because they've been falsely accused. It works both ways here. And so, from the forensic science perspective, we're supposed to be that ethical, unbiased perspective at what really happened here. Not the he say, she say, not the cop said, not the, my girlfriend said, my boyfriend said, my brother said. What does the evidence tell us happened? And the tricky thing about that is, even though we are using the science, we've seen through a lot of these shows, even the forensic scientists can sometimes put in their own bias, or they're not using science necessarily that has been tested the way it should. So, we have to have accountability on all levels. So one thing I want people to know is that forensic science is a wonderful science, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be held accountable for making sure that justice is being applied correctly as well. So, I mean, I know in my own experience as a forensic scientist processing cases, and I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, is thinking about the fact that, there's really two sides to being a forensic scientist and how you handle the way you process your cases. You have that scientific, unbiased, ethical, like straight up and down side of things. Then you have that other human side, which is really important in forensic science, and remembering that the people in your cases, that evidence that you're holding is actually tied to human beings who have been through potentially the worst day of their lives. And now that evidence is in your hands, and you could literally make or break a case based on the way you handle it. And so going into it and having that in mind, that, this is somebody's mother, father, brother, sister, whoever, who's been through this awful thing, and treating your evidence in that case with the respect and dignity that it deserves, so that at the end of the day, you are not the one, as the forensic scientist, who is preventing justice from being done, because sometimes we may be the only ones who can actually provide some answers to what happened.
Wow. So in essence, it's like a lot of times I would imagine, you all have the key. You can either make the case or break the case, depending on, not only the results, but the ethics, surrounding how it is you go about testing. So I've had some people talk to me, off and on, family, friends, about forensics, interested in it at one point, potentially going to look into it now. Could you just break down for us, like on a, again, not giving out any proprietary type of information or any information we shouldn't know, but generally speaking, that process, of a average forensic type case, kind of what some of the things you go through to really arrive at an end to a case, from a scientific perspective.
Right. So, I mean, very first step from the scene of the crime, you're going to have the crime scene investigators who go to the crime scene and collect the evidence. They're going to be collecting items and properly storing them, recording them in the chain of custody. So the chain of custody is basically a document that verifies where that evidence has been from the very moment it's collected, and every single person that has handled that evidence. So they're going to start the chain of custody. They're going to properly collect it, package it, and then they transport that evidence to the lab. And then that evidence is going to be distributed to the different sections within the lab, depending on what needs to be done, whether it's forensic chemistry testing for drugs, the biology unit for DNA testing. Maybe it needs to go to fingerprinting or firearms, or maybe it needs to go to multiple units. Like if you have a firearm that has a bloody fingerprint on it, you got firearms, fingerprints, and DNA all on one item of evidence. So you have to, kind of have a powwow about, all right, what's the most pertinent piece of evidence we want to pull from this? So who's it going to go to first? And then once it gets to your unit, then the analyst gets to work. And I mean, what you do from beginning to end there depends on what unit you're in. So for us in the biology unit, we start by just screening the evidence, inventorying it, writing everything down that we could possibly see, doing preliminary testing. And then ultimately, if we have samples that can go on to DNA testing, then we send those on to DNA testing. And then you have all the interpretation that goes on after that, the report writing, the analysis, the reviews. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that they don't necessarily show you on CSI. They
Right.
show you the fun part. They show you like the DNA going into the instrument, and then all of a sudden the image of the person pops out like 5 seconds later, when there's really like a ton of steps in between that and after that, because we have to, nobody shows us at our computer for days or even weeks at a time writing up a report or doing statistical analyses or, reviewing case files, because in most of our units, cases have to be reviewed by not just one person, but actually two people. All the back and forth with the investigators, talking to them about, hey, you never sent me this standard, or, we don't have a name on this item, or, little stuff like that people don't see. All they see is what's on TV and then what's on the news saying they have all these backlogs. And you're like, no, it's not our fault. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into why we have these backlogs, and a lot of it is out of the control of the labs, but there's so much that just isn't really seen behind the scenes at all.
Well, family, again, if we're just tuning in right now, this is the STEM Files, right? We are live via Facebook and YouTube at the STEM Files, spelled and looked just like it is, THESTEMFILES, and follow us on Instagram at the STEM Files. We are getting into the nitty gritty, family. I've learned so much so far. Just not only the amount of detail that goes into it, but the moral and ethical aspect of forensic science. The fact that it is a bona fide science for anyone who had any doubt about that, right? And the fact that you may need a bit of a strong stomach. I'm sure there's a few different things that are seen. My wife's a surgical technologist, and some of the conversations that we had, I'm like, I just don't know how you cook sometimes or eat at night, but the different things that are seen. But it needs to be done. You think about our community, this is the difference between cousin, brother, mother, father, depending on where they are in the aspect of the crime as a witness or whatever, being acquitted for something, getting the justice they deserve in their death or in their life or whatever. A lot of what you guys do is right smack dab in the middle. So I definitely, am very appreciative of this work, and look forward to more of us getting into things like this, because it's very needed. I want to get more into some of the outreach and what makes you you. You use a term, and this is the first time I've actually seen this term. So I want to unpack this term and actually get into some of your outreach. So you use the term STEM accelerator as something to call yourself. And a lot of times you hear, I conduct STEM outreach. I'm a STEM advocate. I'm big on STEM mentorship and STEM engagement, but STEM accelerator, could you unpack that term for us? How it's become part of your identity and how you kind of will use that term going forward to continue to do what you do at a higher level.
Right. So believe it or not, that is actually literally part of my job title. It literally says
Oh,
that
okay.
in my job title. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you click on HR and Kelly Knight job title, it says associate professor slash STEM accelerator, even though it sounds good just for general use, right?
Right.
So the my university is super unique, and one of the reasons why I love teaching there, because they really value not just teaching STEM, but going above and beyond and figuring out how do we retain students in STEM? How do we recruit students to STEM? You know, how do we make sure they graduate in 4 or 5 years instead of 6, 7, 8, 9 years? How do we help them find jobs after they graduate? And so, what they did is literally we received funding from the governor's office to create a program called the STEM Accelerator Program through our College of Science. And what that program includes is 1 or 2 faculty members from each of our departments in the College of Science who's designated as a STEM Accelerator faculty member. And so we essentially get a reduced teaching load. So normally, depending on what you're doing at a university, most professors teach 3 or 4 classes per semester. As STEM Accelerator faculty, we only have to teach 2, and I shouldn't even say only because 2 is still a lot. But
Mhm.
we teach 2 classes, and the rest of our time, 50% of our time, quote unquote. I feel like it's more like 100% and 100%. But the other percentage of our time is spent dedicated to our STEM accelerator roles. And so in that role, I'm involved with all of these different things in terms of recruitment, retainment, reducing time to graduation, et cetera, et cetera. But my biggest draw and my biggest passion is outreach and recruitment, specifically to students who are underrepresented, people from marginalized communities. That's really my jam. And I mean, honestly, it's part of the reason is because I am from this community.
Right.
I recognize the importance of having advocates at the higher education level who can, help pull you into this system and help provide you with some of the tools and the networks that you may not necessarily get had you not connected with that program. So through that, through my role as a STEM Accelerator faculty, I was able to work with my then director um, at the time to create the females of color and those underrepresented in STEM. So that's kind of our one of our hallmark K-12 outreach programs. And honestly, I mean, it all was kind of natural the way this all came together, because I've always been passionate about outreach even before I came to George Mason. That's part of the reason why I got this job as a STEM accelerator, because they advertised it as such. And I had been doing outreach, even when I was working full time in the crime lab. I was doing outreach all the time. And so when I saw this position, I saw that it was a combination between doing forensic science and, contributing towards STEM efforts. I was like, oh my gosh, if this ain't a dream job come true.
Right.
So I applied for it. And, when they asked that question, why do you want to work here? Why should we hire you? I had my 51 million reasons. I said, all the things, all the outreach I had done, the passion I had for K through 12 students, um, the passion I had just for STEM in general. And so I was able to get the position. And I mean, it's honestly just been a blessing. I say every day, even though, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work because it's a lot of passion work. When you're doing something you're really passionate about, you don't just work 40 hours a week. You work, 60, 70, 80 hours, because you can't just put it down. You're always trying to do something to improve it or to make it better. But I just love what I do, and I love what we can do for our community.
We had this conversation. We talked about that energy before the show, and it's here, it's present, family. I hope that y'all are getting the same energy that I'm getting from Professor Kelly, because it is live in here. I'm enjoying it. We are approaching the halfway point of the show, and we want to get into some of our audience questions. we have soon to be Dr. Orlando Lyles, a very close friend of mine. He's asking you a couple of questions, and I want to make sure I get them right. So here we go. He wants to know more about your journey becoming involved with forensic science. So you mentioned that passion. You talk about being from the community. So kind of getting into that background. He said, at what point in your life did you know that this was your path, the path you want to take, whether it be just in STEM in general and then specifically for forensic science?
Yeah, so it was quite the windy road to get to forensic science. And I think, a lot of people feel that like you kind of, bounce around a little bit until you finally figure out like, okay, this is where I fit. Like your Lego pieces finally start to come together and you're like, all right, now I'm feeling it. So I've always really been interested in STEM. My dad was an air traffic controller. He worked for the Federal Aviation Administration. He was really into aviation and space and all of that stuff. My mom was an educator. And so, very early on, the importance of education and just STEM in general was just always around me. My dad used to build rockets with me when I was younger. We used to build airplanes and all kinds of stuff, which I just love because, a lot of times my dad has 3 girls and, he never got the boy he wanted. And he didn't wait for the boy he wanted to do the boy stuff, which I hate that it's called that. But, building rockets and airplanes is not typically something that fathers do with their daughters. But I'm so glad he did because it just got me so excited about it. And no, I didn't go into aviation. I didn't go into space, but it was enough to get my interest sparked in just the STEM area in general. And so I kind of evolved a lot from, early on being exposed to aviation and space with my dad to, thinking I wanted to be a veterinarian. I did some vet tech stuff and decided that wasn't for me. Then I, hit this whole, I want to be pre-med because I'm going to be a doctor. That didn't work out. My first semester of college, I graduated valedictorian, not to toot my own horn, but I say that because of my next story. So I graduated valedictorian, 4.2 GPA. Thought I was the jam. I was like, all right, I'm smart. I'm gonna go into GW. I'm a major in biology. I'm gonna be pre-med. I'm gonna be a doctor. First semester, I was like, we are not in high school anymore. What is going on? I got my first C in biology. I ran for the hills. I was like, all right, this is not going to work. I did well in chemistry, majored in chemistry, but then ended up struggling in chemistry towards the end of my undergraduate career and really started hating it. I mean, no diss to any chemists out there, but it just was not for me. I mean, I stuck it out and got the major, but I knew I was like, this is not what I want to do with my career. But then, I was majoring in chemistry, but I concentrated in forensic chemistry. And the reason why I concentrated in it was because of a lab activity I had done with a teacher in high school, and it was a crime lab activity, but way before CSI even came out. But she had this crime lab activity and we did blood typing and we had to figure out, who matched this, and I thought that was so cool. And so I concentrated in forensic chemistry when I was at GW. And even though I knew chemistry was not for me, I still was really interested in the forensic aspect of things. And so my senior year, I got a job as a DNA technician for a really big private DNA lab. And that's when it finally clicked. And I was like, all right, this is it. This is what I want to do. So that's when I decided to go back to go to grad school to get my degree in forensic biology.
Wow. I had to, when you were talking about that chemistry, I had to wince a little bit.
I know, I was like,
everybody, a lot of us, we got that story
where,
I graduated top of this, and I was captain of this, and president of that, and, I did all this stuff, and then I get smacked in the face when I go to college or whatever, because everybody's number one, and then you see that there's levels to this. But I think you spoke to the ability to assess yourself. Okay, listen. I'm still who I am. I'm more than a number. I always was more than a number. And I was able to push forward and really overcome those obstacles to be the boss lady that I am today. Still with her flaws, still with the things that she goes through. But what you see is the very definition of grind. So I do want to thank Orlando for that question and actually go into a second one. So going back to our social climate today, we know we're seeing a lot of things for our people. We're seeing a lot of things that it pertains to our Black women. So being as you're such a success as you are and going through what you've gone through and getting to where you are today, have you had to overcome any race or sex-based discrimination in your workplace or on the journey toward where you are today, and kind of how have you dealt with that?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely felt it. Sometimes it's not always something that's overtly said to me, but you definitely feel it. You get the vibe and you know why certain things are done.
Right.
You know why certain teachers don't want to put any additional effort into you. You know why certain people are given certain roles before you are. Um, and I mean, I've definitely experienced in terms of my career. I mean, I'd say that the worst of it for me is the tokenism for sure.
Okay.
I am one of maybe I think two or three Black faculty in my college. And so feeling that extra strain of having to be on every diversity committee, every search committee, every front page of the whatever, because they want to have the one Black person, you
Right.
definitely feel that, and that's stressful. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely felt it, and it's tough. It's definitely tough, and it's unfair that we have to feel and go through those things and have to go 200% over what everybody else does just to get half of what they have. um so yeah, I've definitely experienced it.
Mm. I definitely appreciate your honesty with that. Sometimes I think as professionals, as Black people, different people in marginalized groups, I've heard people say, well, I get tired of being that one that has to talk about the Black experience, or I have to talk about the Black female experience or whatever. And
Right.
I think for myself, though we may get tired of, having to explain things to people or whatever, we do owe it to not only ourselves, but those coming up after us that may have to see these same things. Hey, listen, I need you to know that within the confines of this arena where we're dealing with people who do not necessarily look like us, this is some of the things that you may interact with, and these are how to, circumvent these obstacles, jump over, or just downright smash through the obstacle and say, hey, look, I'm here, deal with it, and I'm going to kill it. So
Exactly.
I'm very appreciative for, the all the bosses in our community striving to really uplift ourselves and also reach back and uplift those who look like us so we can move forward. So definitely salute to you.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah,
go ahead.
that
Go
is,
ahead.
I mean, that is so important to me. Because I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have somebody do that for me. And I didn't have anybody do that for me until I got to grad school. And what's amazing about it is it wasn't a Black woman, it was a white woman.
Right.
But she saw enough. And that's the thing that people should understand is that, it's really helpful to have Black people represented in these spaces, but you don't have to be Black to make a difference in the lives of Black people. If anything, if you're not Black, you should be trying twice as hard because you actually hold some of the power that we are lacking in some of these spaces. And I had a mentor who, she really breathed life into me, and she believed in me, and she really went that extra mile to uplift me. And she set the bar for how I wanted to be as a mentor. And so now in my role, as a professor, and, the advisor of the Women of Color and STEM student org. And, I'm the, I'm in charge of the counselors for our Females of Color STEM program. And so I just try to do my best to reach back to them and to continue to breathe life into them and to give them the advice and the support that I needed and wanted when I was in undergrad. Because, not everybody is going to have the strength to come from an awful undergrad experience and still say, all right, I'm going to just push through. I mean, the only reason I was able to do that is because I still, I had other things that were kind of inside of me that just wouldn't let me stop. But there are some students who, if they don't have that support at the undergrad level, that's going to be it for them. They're going to be like, well, I'm not even going to try because nobody cares. There's no point in me doing this. And so that whole mentorship aspect and giving back and reaching back is super important.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, definitely. So family, again, this is the STEM Files, right? We are live via Facebook and YouTube. Make sure that if you have not power smashed that like button, have not shared to your friends, family, dog, fish, next door neighbor, everybody, please do so and follow us at the STEM Files on Instagram. Family, we have proposed this the halfway point of our show, and we want to highlight a Black-owned business or initiative, right? One thing that we have to remember and that we strive to make sure as a parent is that the STEM Files is powered by Original Man Scientific. Original Man Scientific is my and Tariq's, child. It's a budding research and development company geared towards delivering the advantages of research and development to our community and other marginalized groups. And within this company, we have an upcoming initiative called our Invention and Innovation Online Workshops. We will be hosting online virtual workshops where we'll be teaching youth ages 8 to 18 everything it is to know, or really kind of walking them through what an invention is, what it means to be innovative, what it means to have an innovation, how to capitalize on their creativity and inventive minds, and really bring something from that concept, work on it as a physical product, and potentially even bring it to market and have it marketed so they can benefit for themselves and actually benefit society. We are very excited for this program. Registration is open. You can go down to www.omasci.com/onmessevents to register. Again, this is online workshops, and we're taking our experiences as well as the experiences of guest instructors and pushing it into our babies, into our children, to make sure that they understand that they don't just have to work for someone. They can take what's in their minds, bring it out of their minds, and actually see it come to life and be able to benefit themselves and others. That's going to be September 19th to November 14th, a 9-week course going through inventions and innovations. So definitely want to make sure you know about that, because we're going to segue now into your program, which is called Focus. So very specifically, let me make sure I bring that up appropriately. So you also are the co-founder and director of Females of Color and Those Underrepresented in STEM Focus summer programs for middle and high school girls. Talk about, give some background on this program, what it is, what some of your successes have been, and how people can even get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started this program, myself and let's see, I can see my other co-founders pictured there. So Padu Sesher, who is, if you're looking directly at me with all the curly hair in the middle, he would be to the left of me. Danielle Craddock in the yellow gold shirt to the right of me. And then another professor who, she's not pictured there, but Dr. Claudette Davis. So the four of us founded this program in 2014. And, originally we had started this program and we had started another program at the same time called STEM Mania for grades 3 through 5 for anybody, girls, boys, whatever. But then after that first year of doing that program, we saw how, there's a need for all age groups and all different types of races and ethnicities, but we saw especially the need for a specified STEM program for girls of color. And so what we decided to do was we decided to focus all of our energy there. And it was unfortunate for a lot of our elementary parents because they want us to bring back the other programs so bad. And we will one day. We're just, we're stretched thin because we're all, faculty members and doing this program in addition to that. But, we really wanted to focus our energy there. So we started with just 18 girls in middle school. And I think we had maybe 3 or 4 undergraduate counselors. And then, the program we felt was so successful that the following year we applied for funding through the Business Women's Giving Circle of Northern Virginia. And we received the funding to increase the program to 100 girls. And we had, I think, 25 counselors. And I mean, the response from the program was just outstanding. What we do is we focus on a different letter of STEM every day. So for example, on Mondays, we do all science workshops. On Tuesdays, we do tech. Wednesdays, we do engineering. Thursdays, we do math. And all of the workshops are really hands-on and interactive. We try to come from a culturally relevant and responsive pedagogical perspective so that we're not just, we're keeping all of those important things in mind, because we want this to be a unique experience for them. We want to draw them back into why they should like STEM and enjoy STEM. And we want to, most importantly, provide them with role models that, so they can see themselves in STEM. So we have all different types of presenters, but we are very intentional about trying to invite women of color to come and do our workshops. We're very intentional about the counselors that we hire. We have any type of counselor, but we really try to be intentional about recruiting women of color to be our counselors as well, because it's important for us that they see themselves at every level. They see themselves in their peers, like, oh, okay, my friend is doing this, it's cool, we're having fun. That they see themselves at the college level through their counselors, like, oh, okay, wow, she looks like me, she talks like me, and she's doing her thing, majoring in STEM. And then they can see themselves even further as someone in the career of STEM who still, is fly and, is doing their thing and, running their own STEM business or working for a lab or whatever. And so we just want to provide all of those different levels of role models and experiences for them. And then what we ended up doing was, because the middle school program was so popular, after those students graduated from middle school, their parents were like, so what are we going to do now? Like, we have to keep this going.
Are we going to keep it going?
Exactly. And then we started thinking, yep, STEM pipeline. I was like, we got to keep this going. And so then we created the Focus Academy program, which is a residential STEM program. So now we've taken it a step up from the middle school, and now we bring them on campus. They get to actually live in the dorms. They eat where the college students eat. They have a lot more college prep. So we do SAT stuff with them. We do, self-esteem and confidence building workshops, just really trying to empower them and prepare them for STEM, not just in an environment where everybody looks the same, but how do you do this once you get back to your schools and now, maybe you're the only Black girl there again, or maybe you have a teacher who's not encouraging you. And how do we prepare you with the network that you need in order to continue on to now studying STEM in college and persisting in STEM and, not getting burnt out and not feeling like you don't have access to the proper resources and connections. So it's really continued to blossom more and more and more, to the point where now we're continuing that pipeline, and we're going to be doing focus scholars, where now we're going to have the focus level at college. So we're hoping that we're going to keep that pipeline tight from middle school to high school to now that you're in college. By the way, we're going to be intentional about putting you in research experiences. We're going to be intentional about connecting you with funding. We're going to be intentional about connecting you with mentors and a network of people to support you and advising and all of these things that, when I think about people who come from privileged backgrounds and they have these networks and this, STEM capital kind of built in for them. And so they're set for success from day one. Whereas you have these other students who, like, for me, I wasn't a first generation student, but my parents did not study STEM in college. And so when it came to what I needed to do at the college level, I was floundering. I had no idea. Like, I had nobody to tell me to do research. I had nobody to tell me what I should be doing to stay successful in my STEM major. And so we're just trying to provide that network for them. And, we just want to keep it going.
Mm. You said a very key word like several times. You talked about intent being intentional. And that's super important for me because I think about a lot of things like when I've sat on panels or engaged in mentorship or being someone's mentee, I've either been asked or like tried to put on the or prick the minds of who I'm talking about intent. Prime example is when I discuss, and I'm sure you might have had this conversation as well, discussing why you want to go to college or why you want to do these things or do a certain thing. When you cannot be in STEM or look to not only be in STEM but be successful in it without intent, and like no one rolls over and says, "Oh, I'm gonna be a doctor." It doesn't work like that. Typically there was something that was an entry point for you into that arena, something that interested you, and then you continue to work and strive and ally yourselves with mentors and people to keep pushing you forward. It's not easy. Every time as you're speaking to me, I'm going back in my own mind, in a different field in engineering, those long nights, those times when I had it. I laugh at it now, but sitting in my parents' dining room going through a calc 2 problem, I broke down, because it was getting to me,
Right.
and it's like school was never that thing that until like college that like you thought about or had doubts about whether or not you could do. So just kind of unpacking intent. How do you kind of walk with that as a mantra if you do, through your daily life with everything you do, whether it would be with family, with your job or even with that program? Like how does that kind of shape how you interact with people and things?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about mindset and planning. And it's something you have to think about every single day from the moment you wake up. When I wake up with intent. And the way I do that is I plan ahead. I write things down. I focus and meditate on what type of person I want to be in that day, in that moment, for that week. Do I want to be organized? Do I want to be successful? Do I want to carve out time to, make sure I'm spending time with my family or that I'm spending time mentoring people? I got to get myself in that mindset, remind myself of why I'm doing things. And it all started with having these. I heard somebody refers it to like a Sunday night meeting. And I literally have these things every Sunday where I sit down and I kind of set myself up for the week. And I think about, all of my different roles and responsibilities. And I write them down and I write out my intent for the week. Literally, I write it out. I write, I'm looking at my planner on the floor now. I write things to myself in my planner that remind me of who I am and why I'm doing what I'm doing and what I am doing because I'll forget if I don't write it down. But I just think that that's really important for every step of your journey, whether it's I'm a mom, I have 2 kids, I'm a wife, I am working full time teaching 2 classes. I'm mentoring students. I also just started a PhD program. And so thank you. Intent is crucial for me because without intent, I have no motivation. And without motivation, I will not succeed. I will just flounder. So, I mean, I think that's a really important thing to have if you want to get things done. If you want to apply action, you got to start with the intent.
Right. It's something that I have learned, growing up. As a member of the Nation of Islam. We have it's a saying that I've learned. I've come to strive to understand is, desire feeds the will. Right. So when you desire, if your desire for something is weak, you'll be weak-willed. When you feel like, why can I do this? It's because you really don't desire it strong enough for whatever reason, whether it be a fear that you can't complete it, you can't do it. It's the unknown. I don't know how to start, and I'm talking about these are things, being very transparent myself that I've struggled with. And, for all of us who at whatever point in our lives, currently or formerly, have been successful, this is something that we've come in contact with. So, I just want to, as we're coming to the end of the show, another question. So I have this is right on cue. Going back to that your program Focus, right? Which we have one of our guests, Roxanne Muhammad. She has a 12-year-old daughter who would like to become a forensic scientist. So we got another potential mentee for you. She asked, what path can she take right now? She's 12, but my understanding in STEM, and I've always told people it's never too early to start, right? And she would also like to know what are the duties in the crime lab. And I know you kind of unpacked that earlier, but what can she do right now, and what can be some of the things she can expect getting older?
Right. So right now, the pandemic is awful. Awful. I hate it. Boo to COVID.
Right.
But I will tell you one thing that's been amazing about the pandemic is I have been connected to workshops, conferences, meetings, camps, programs, people that I've never been able to connect with before because of all of these virtual opportunities. So there's so many virtual programs that you can seek out, and I'm sure there is a forensic science one. I am actually this close to coming out with one on my own, so stay tuned for that.
Do it.
It's going to be, yes, it's going to be called Forensic Fridays, the curriculum, and I'm going to be doing forensic science sessions on Fridays with students who want to, get involved and learn more about forensic science from different forensic scientists and do some hands-on stuff, because now we have the opportunity to connect with people in a way that we never really thought of doing before because we felt so confined by our locations. But now through Zoom and all these other things, you could do that. So I'm hoping to come out with something eventually. But in the meantime, you could probably search for some things online. There's lots of videos online on YouTube. If you just start looking up some of these forensic science videos, if she's 12, I do recommend you watch them first, though, because some of them can get a little tricky.
Right.
So you want to make sure you watch them and mom and dad give the okay first. But, looking into camps, there's lots of camps and programs, even if it's not forensic science specific, just keeping her engaged in any type of STEM stuff, because forensic science is like the most beautiful example of STEM ever, because we do it all. We do science, we do tech, we do engineering, we do math. And so if she gets involved in these STEM programs and then finds out through one of those that she's really interested in one particular area, guarantee you there's a forensic science application to that. And then once she decides on wanting to study forensic science, there's undergraduate programs where you can major in forensic science. And what they're going to do is they're going to show you both the lab side and the field side. So there's lots of different disciplines within forensic science. If you want to work in the field, you have the people who do like the crime scene work. You have like forensic anthropologists who look at bones and that kind of thing. You have entomologists who study insects and how they relate to forensic science. And then you have the people who just work in the lab. They work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. They do your DNA analysis, your chemistry analysis, your fingerprints, your toxicology, and that kind of thing. So, a lot of students, I have grad students, to be honest, who come into the program and they still don't know which area within forensic science they want to go into. But if you have a general idea that you just like forensics, just continue to take classes and courses until you're able to narrow it down to what specific discipline you want to get involved in.
Well, obviously, I couldn't have answered that question any better myself. But Sister Roxanne, hope you got all of that. Like we were saying, now we're in this virtual world that we're in now. The world has never been so small. We want to take care of our families, want to make sure everyone's safe. We also want to make sure that we get busy, providing for ourselves and our children, our families, the things that they need to succeed, particularly in their interests. I speak for myself and Tariq, and our siblings. We were all homeschooled for a significant amount of time. Second to ninth grade for myself, and I know with my parents always putting us in a position to succeed by making sure we stayed around not only what we were interested in, but we were naturally good at. And I just want to make sure that program that you're going to start, you're going to be making sure that's aired through your personal pages and everything, right? So we can follow you and get that information as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Once my website is kellythescientist.com, and I'm most active on Instagram. I have Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. But I'm most active on Instagram. I do like my Forensic Friday posts where I talk about forensic science specifically on Fridays. And then yeah, once I end up doing my Forensic Fridays curriculum, it's just this first couple of weeks of classes has been killing me already. So, I'm hoping to get that out soon. But yeah, I'm hoping to connect with more students who just want to know more about forensic science through that platform.
Yes, ma'am. And as I put here, we have your information here as well. If anyone wants to get in touch with Professor Kelly, please do so by these different means. She just said she was most active through Instagram. Family, we are approaching the end of the show. A few more minutes. Thank you so much, Professor Kelly. I've been thoroughly fed. I now have some points to go to my family members who've talked about forensic scientists. I got a link, a plug for them, a potential mentor for them to get into the field and everything. Family, I
Absolutely.
do remiss if I did not go back into, again, the STEM Files is powered by Original Man Scientific, and back into that virtual world, right? We'll be having our invention and innovation online workshops. Myself, Tariq, as well as our partnered instructors will be going through inventions and innovations, what they are, how to leverage your creativity and ideas, and also be problem oriented. You see a problem in the world, how can you solve that with what you have in your mind and bring it to fruition? And it's a 9-week course surrounding this. Register today, www.oldmansci.com/OMS events. It's for youth ages 8 to 18, September 19th to November 14th. Going to have an awesome time. And if you would like to support our independent content, this STEM-owned content, right? We want to make sure that you can do that at Cash App on the STEM Files. Support our content there for everything we do. We are doing this weekly. And making sure that we're getting you guys great guests, such as Professor Kelly Knight. Were we not, well informed tonight? I know I was again. So again, I want to thank you very much. And we definitely got to do a part 2. We can have the whole gang together, myself, Tariq, and yourself. Before we close and anything, there was one more thing that I wanted to ask. So you mentioned it, but if there was one piece of advice that you would give to, quote unquote, minority student, young person, marginalized group, what would that be as it pertains to pushing themselves to move forward in any career field that they choose?
Get a mentor. Get a mentor. Get somebody who supports you emotionally, academically, physically, all of those things that you need. That mentally, you need somebody who's going to be in your corner, that's going to be your advocate, that's going to help support you professionally. We can't do it alone. I know we like to think that. I like to think that, I'm a strong Black woman. I like to say, I don't need anybody's help. I got this. I'll figure it out. But we all need somebody. And, I learned the hard way how much I needed somebody. I struggled more than I should have. And I feel like if I had gotten connected with the right people early on, and getting connected with like a program like mine, it doesn't have to be my program, but that's a great way at a young age to find a mentor. There's so many people there that you could connect with, or even now connecting with people on LinkedIn and just, seeing where your interests are similar. And you don't have to come right out in your first message like, hey, can you be my mentor? But because some mentors are toxic also. So you also want to make sure you don't pick the wrong person to kind of be your guiding light. But definitely try to connect with somebody who's going to be there to support all aspects of who you are and who you want to be. And that will get you really far.
Thank you so much, family. This has been another installment of the STEM Files, using science to obtain justice. I am your co-host, the brilliant engineer, typically joined by my partner, I don't want to say in crime, in righteousness, Tariq Muhammad.
I love it.
Tariq Cardiac, who is, I misspoke earlier, he is a biomedical scientist in cardiovascular biology. We got to make sure we get those titles and areas of expertise correct, because we want to make sure we come correct with all of that. Thank you so much. Please tune in for our next show this coming Saturday, August 29th, where we're going to have Dr. Mariam Farrakhan back with us for a part 2, going over being doctors for our community, being able to elevate that community and move us forward in the medical realm. Family, with that, I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I hope you have. Thank you so much, Professor Kelly. And we're looking forward to having you on for our part 2. Thank you so much, family.
Thanks for having me. Bye.